Welcome to Southwest Desert, where adventure meets the arid beauty of the American Southwest. Join us as we explore the rugged landscapes, uncover hidden historical gems, and dive deep into the rich legends and culture of this iconic region. Subscribe now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on our latest desert adventures. Please leave a like or comment. This is very helpful. Let's journey together into the heart of the Southwest Desert. Imagine this. It's 1879, and two broke miners are trudging through the dusty hills of New Mexico, chasing nothing but whispers and legends. They're dead broke. They've failed spectacularly in Colorado's silver boom. And they're about to stumble onto something that will trigger one of the most explosive gold rushes the Southwest has ever seen. A stampede so violent, so sudden, that within months, a tent city will transform into a roaring metropolis of 2,500 fortune seekers. This is the story of Cerrillos, New Mexico, the gold rush that history almost forgot. Most people have heard of California's gold rush. They know about the Klondike. But hidden in the hills just 25 miles southwest of Santa Fe lies a ghost of a boom town that once rivaled them all. And its story begins not with discovery, but with desperation. Frank Dimmitt and Robert Hart were nobody special. Dimmitt was American, Hart was English, and both were what you might call professionally unsuccessful miners. They'd tried their luck in Leadville, Colorado, one of the richest mining districts in American history, and had come up empty-handed, completely broke. But these men had heard the stories, ancient legends whispered by locals about the Cerrillos Hills, tales that stretched back centuries before any white prospector ever set foot in the territory. The Spanish had known about these hills. For generations, they'd enslaved indigenous peoples to tear turquoise and silver from places with names like Mount Chalchihuitl and Mina del Tierra, the mine of the earth itself. The legend spoke of unimaginable wealth, of veins of precious metal so rich that Spanish conquistadors had gorged themselves on the plunder for decades. But by 1879, those mines were considered played out, forgotten, relegated to campfire stories. Dimmitt and Hart didn't care about history. They cared about survival. And so, in 1879, with nothing to lose and everything to gain, these two empty-handed dreamers headed south from Leadville into New Mexico territory to see if the legends held any truth. What happened next changed everything. The two prospectors surveyed the Cerrillos Hills methodically, hammering away at rock faces, collecting samples, stuffing their saddlebags with ore specimens. When they finally made the long journey back to Leadville, they carried with them something more valuable than gold itself: proof. They submitted their collection to the assay offices, and when those results came back, the mining community absolutely exploded with excitement. The ore wasn't just good, it was extraordinary. High-grade deposits of gold, silver, copper, lead, and zinc. A mineral cocktail so rich that every prospector who heard about it immediately understood what it meant. Dimmitt and Hart had rediscovered one of the most valuable mineral deposits in the entire Southwest. The stampede was inevitable. Word spread through Leadville like wildfire, and miners who'd spent years scratching out meager livings in Colorado suddenly saw their second chance. The rush to Cerrillos began almost overnight. By the time the dust settled, hundreds of miners had descended on the Cerrillos Hills. The initial wave erected a sprawling tent city that sprang up seemingly overnight. But as the gold continued to pour out of the earth, something unexpected happened. The tent city began to solidify. Permanent structures replaced canvas. Streets emerged. Businesses opened. What had started as a desperate gamble by two broke prospectors had transformed into a legitimate town, Cerrillos, Spanish for Little Hills. And it wasn't just Cerrillos. The strike was so massive that satellite communities sprouted up almost simultaneously, towns with names that captured the fever dream optimism of the era: Carbonateville, Bonanza City, each one filled with men willing to risk everything for a chance at striking it rich. By midsummer of 1879, just months after Dimmitt and Hart's discovery, 300 miners were actively working the hills, gouging out gold, silver, and copper from the earth in a frenzy of extraction. And then came another discovery that would cement Cerrillos' importance: coal. Rich coal deposits along the Galisteo River meant that Cerrillos not only produced precious metals, but also had the fuel to power the smelters that would process them. It was a prospector's dream scenario. The transformation accelerated when the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway announced it would lay tracks directly through Cerrillos in 1880. This was the seal of legitimacy. Railroads didn't invest in flash-in-the-pan mining camps. They invested in the future. The railroad brought more than just transportation. It brought opportunity. When construction crews arrived to lay track, they found a town still figuring out how to accommodate its exploding population. 6 railroad workers and their foreman had nowhere to eat, nowhere to sleep. A woman named Mrs. Harkness, whose husband was off prospecting, made a generous offer. She'd put them all up in her home. When her husband, D.D. Harkness, returned from his expedition, he found himself accidentally in the hotel business. And business was booming. The Harknesses eventually built an 18-room hotel called the Cerrillos House, transforming their charitable gesture into one of the town's most successful enterprises. But with rapid growth came chaos. Cerrillos in the early 1880s was a rough place, filled with rough men far from civilization's restraining influences. The righteous citizens of the town had zero tolerance for disorder, and in January 1882, that intolerance manifested in one of the most brutal acts of frontier justice the town would ever witness. A man laying water pipes to the railroad station, described only as being of questionable character, took offense at some slight from a co-worker. Recognizing he couldn't win a fair fight, he hatched a cowardly plan. He exploited his victim's weakness for liquor, got the man catastrophically drunk, and then savagely beat him nearly to death while the poor soul was too intoxicated to defend himself. The community's response was swift and merciless. The perpetrator was arrested, but the citizens of Cerrillos decided official justice wasn't enough. An angry mob stormed the saloon where the prisoner was being held, overpowered the guards, and dragged the man to a slaughterhouse. They stripped him, tied him to a wall, and flogged him with such brutality that flesh tore from his back and blood streamed down his body. When they finally cut him down, they threw a blanket over his mangled back and told him to get out of Cerrillos and never come back. He left immediately. No one ever saw him again. This was frontier justice in its rawest form: violent, immediate, and absolutely effective. Cerrillos would tolerate gold fever, but it wouldn't tolerate cowardice and cruelty. Through the 1880s and 1890s, Cerrillos experienced the typical boom and bust cycles of a mining town, but its peak was genuinely impressive. At its height, the population swelled to 2,500 people, a remarkable number for a remote New Mexico mining camp. By 1897, the town boasted 2 churches, a public school with 130 students, 3 hotels, multiple general stores, Wells Fargo Express, Western Union Telegraph, and a population that had stabilized around 800 permanent residents. This wasn't just a mining camp anymore. This was a real town, with families, infrastructure, and aspirations beyond simply extracting wealth from the earth. Cerrillos became the supply and shipping hub for the entire region, supporting nearby mining towns like Golden, San Pedro, and Dolores, as well as the coal camps of Madrid and Waldo. The railroad connection made it indispensable. Gold, silver, copper, coal, all of it flowed through Cerrillos on its way to markets across the country. One of the town's most elegant buildings was the Palace Hotel, built by Richard Green, a Texan who'd relocated to New Mexico with his wife and numerous children during the boom. The hotel featured a dozen rooms, including a bridal suite in its stone section, with an adobe addition built 2 years later to house a dining room. The building served multiple purposes over the years, housing a tailor shop, a doctor's office, a dentist's office, and even serving as a meeting place for the Masonic Lodge. When Green died in his own hotel in 1906, his widow sold the property and moved to California. Because that's what eventually happened to Cerrillos. The gold played out. The easily accessible ore was exhausted. The miners moved on to the next strike, the next promise of fortune. By the mid-20th century, mining was no longer important to Cerrillos. The population had dwindled to just 50 families, but the town didn't die. Instead, it transformed. Cerrillos reinvented itself as a tourist attraction, trading on its authentic Old West charm. The buildings from the boom era still stood, weathered but proud, offering visitors a genuine glimpse into frontier mining life. And in a delightful twist of fate, the town caught the eye of none other than Walt Disney himself. Captivated by Cerrillos' authentic charm, Disney used the main street as the backdrop for his El Fuego Baca television series, disguising the town as the fictional Frisco. Even today, those production signs are still faintly visible on the buildings, a Hollywood footnote to a gold rush story. Cerrillos stands today as a reminder that the American gold rush wasn't just California in 1849. It was dozens of strikes, hundreds of boom towns, thousands of desperate men willing to risk everything for a chance at fortune. Most failed. Some succeeded beyond imagination. And a few, like Cerrillos, left behind something more valuable than gold, a living testament to an era when the American West was still being written, one strike at a time. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more great content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.